In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Starling Bank. Now, I'm going to be linking through to an article on the Money to the Masses website, which you should bookmark because you can then read the full review at your own leisure. But I will be using it as reference to guide this conversation. If you find this video useful, do make sure you hit that like button, but also subscribe to the channel because we do carry out reviews on all sorts of products. So I'm going to jump straight across to the article in question. You can see it here, the Starling Bank review. Now I'm going to give you the edited highlights about the key points that you should bear in mind. Feel free to pause and read it on screen, but like I say, I will link to it in the notes of this video so you can actually read it in your own leisure. Now going down, Starling Bank is an app-only bank. Now as somebody who has used it extensively, I have to say overall I think it is a very good product. Now if you're looking for a bank to open quickly online in a very slick fashion with a very good app, then Starling Bank is one to have a very serious look at. Now one thing that is attractive about Starling Bank compared to some of its competitors in this app only space is that it pays interest on its current account balance. It's 3.25%. So that is relatively new. It didn't used to pay such an attractive rate of interest. I know you may be able to get better rates elsewhere, but it is a fairly decent rate that you can get on current account balance. Now, there are usual features you would expect on an app-only bank. So you can freeze your card, you can block payments, you can set up saving spaces. Now, this is pretty useful for people who are budgeting. You may be saving for a holiday. It's the sort of thing I've used in the past. So you can have the same account, but it creates a space where you can designate money into it. In the past, people would have used a system maybe of having multiple current accounts where they moved money once they got paid out of their main bank account into another one that may be used for, say, shopping. It might be used for saving for a holiday. With Starling, what you do or can do is use spaces to segregate your money within that account. So you keep it separate and then you can actually spend directly from those spaces as well. And they do have a feature where they can give you a virtual card for those spaces. So to give you an example, let's say you're going to go on holiday, you saved up your money into one of these spaces within your current account, you then go on holiday, rather than having to move the money back into your current account, you actually can put a virtual card in your Apple Wallet, for example, and then spend directly from that space while you're abroad, which is incredibly useful. Other things you can do, obviously, is set up payments. You can change a lot within the app. It could be, for example, find out your PIN number. It could be doing things like turning the card on and off if you've lost it. One thing I do like about Starling is the roundup spending feature. So what that is let's say you go to a shop and you spend some money and it's £3.50. It will round out the difference between that amount and the next nearest pound. So in that example I've just given, it would round up to £4 and 50p you could, for example, have rounded up and put into a separate spending pot. You can have a connected card. These are features I'm going to be talking about in more detail. So Kite card is another one. Bear those names in mind because I'll be talking about them later in this review. But the biggie for me is the cash withdrawals abroad and the ability to use a card abroad without being charged. Again, I'm going to come on to that in more detail, but it was the one thing that really got me onto Starling. So let's look at the Starling bank accounts you can have. Of course, you can have a personal account. You can actually have a joint account. So if there's two people with two single accounts, you can then have a joint account between you. Again, setting that up is relatively easy. You just have to end up using the apps online. There's no going to visit a bank as you'd expect with an app-only bank. You don't have to actually go in branch or anything. You can do it all online using your ID, driving license, and recording videos and taking photographs. So the account itself is very straightforward to use. So the Starling connected card. Now this card, I touched upon it earlier on in this video. I like this card. So what this does, this is a separate card, a prepaid card that you can have alongside your current account and your normal card, and it has a spending cap on it of £200, and it's in a separate space in your Starling app. So a reason you might use this, for example, is if you went on holiday, someone was house sitting, you could give them this separate card you get sent in the post with that some money on it. You might put £50, £100, whatever. They can use that and you can see them spending it. They use it like a debit card in the shop, and it means you don't have to leave money behind. So it is a very clever way of giving people access to money. It may be, for example, there's somebody vulnerable that you want to give them a prepaid card that they can go and use money, but you have control over within your app. I do like that feature. Starling Kite account. So Starling Kite is basically the kids account. So for children aged between 6 and 16 years old, and again it sits in this space idea, but it has this connected card. Now it is free. It never used to be, but it is now, and it's a feature I like and I do use for one of my children. So it works very much if you look at things like Revolut have their under 18s versions of their account. Same way, you can put money in there, they get a card, they can use it in the shop, spend online. Very clever. Now there is the Starling business account that is available. I'm not going to dwell on it in this particular review. You can see the information on screen there, but there are no fees for the business account unless you opt to sign up for the business toolkit, which does cost a monthly fee. So there is that option. People who've used the business account that I know of are very complimentary of it. Now, going down, how much does it cost? Doesn't cost anything to use the Starling main account. Of course, if you want to have an overdraft, there will be charges, as mentioned on screen, and they do depend upon your credit score. Now, because when you open a Starling account, there is no automatic overdraft attached to it, then that means there is no hard credit check when you apply for the account, which is good if you just want a new account to use, a new current account, but you don't want to have a credit check on your file, hard credit check. Maybe you're going to be applying for a mortgage in the near future. So that is something to bear in mind. Is Starling safe to use? Well, it is a UK bank that is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Also, any money held with them is covered under the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which means that if Starling was to go bust, then as a sole person with a single account, you'd be covered up to £85,000. Now, that is obviously good news. If you have multiple accounts, it's still £85,000. So do bear that in mind if you have a joint account, for example. Now, this is the really interesting part. Using your Starling card abroad. Now, Starling is a debit card, and when you travel abroad, you aren't charged any fees by them for using your card abroad or withdrawing from ATMs. Now, the thing to bear in mind, you may be charged fees by the ATM machine itself, but not by Starling. Now, there are other sort of T's and C's that you want to be aware of, then you can read the review in full. But the main thing is, generally speaking, when you go abroad and use Starling, it is free to use, which was incredibly attractive. Now, I believe Starling calls lots of other banks to start giving fee-free experiences abroad as well. Say, for example, First Direct that never used to, they are now doing it. So Starling is fantastic. They do offer a decent exchange rate as well, having used it and looked at how that compares to the likes of Revolut, for example. More details are in the review, of course. Looking at customer reviews. Now, if you look at the customer reviews, they've got 4.4 stars out of 5 from over 38,000 reviews on Trustpilot, which rates it as excellent. I can see why, to be honest, having used it. Now, if you want to look at alternatives, now there are some real competitors out there. So there's a great table in the review here that looks at Monzo, Revolut and Moneys. Now, looking at this table here in the article, it compares all of the features for those people who are looking at maybe taking out Starling or Monzo or even Revolut. Now, I'm not going to go through all the features here because you can see it on screen. But probably the biggest one that differentiates Starling from Monzo, which is probably its closest competitor, is the fact that it pays the interest on the current account. But obviously we have a full review of Monzo, which we'll link to in the notes of this video. Pros and cons I'd like to finish up on. Look, you can see 24/7 access, no monthly fees for services. The big one for me had always been the fee-free spending abroad. Like I say, more banks are doing it, but it is very easy to use and safe and secure abroad. Cons, well, the marketplace that it does offer. So there is a marketplace that it offers within the app which links other types of financial apps with the Starling one. So, for example, there are a couple of pension companies on there. There's a couple of budgeting apps on there as well. So it means you can link up and use their services as well. There's actually a mortgage comparison service. But all of those you can actually access without going via Starling. So the marketplace offers some limited deals and access to companies, but to be honest with you, you can probably find better elsewhere. And the other thing I would point out, which if you're looking for a joint account, Starling might not necessarily be your first port of call, especially if you're wanting an overdraft. So that isn't available on a joint account, which is a bit of a frustration for customers. And so some of its features are just limited to the personal account. You can't get them on the joint account. But overall, Starling is a fantastic choice. There are other competitors out there, which I do also like. You can find the reviews of things like Monzo, which I'll put a link to in the notes of this video. And of course, I'll put a link to the full review on the Money to the Masses website as well. But overall, as an app-only bank, I think it has really pushed things, and I think it's for the benefit of all customers, not just Starling's customers, but we're seeing movements within the banking industry in the UK to take up some of the features that Starling has already offered its customers.